I'd like to touch upon one of the concepts that the Ascended Masters and Angels have been bringing through regularly. And it's the idea of spatiality, or the absence of it within creation, and also, connected with this, how it is that we form a sense of place and location in the absence of spatiality. And the answer may be quite surprising. So we know that we live in a physical dimension. We can see it all about us, and we experience it through our own body and how we interact with everything. And this affords us a sense of moving through the world. That gives us a sense of location and movement. But when you move your consciousness outside of the physical body, then do we still have a sense of spatiality within creation? And do we have a sense of place and location? So let's hear what the Ascended Masters have had to say. Firstly, I'm going to give a quote from the Ascended Master Mary, as she says, "For humans, steeped in space and time, there is a sense of finite population. When I existed in physicality, in the life that I am known by, Mother Mary, there was barely any population at all. So then the idea of infinite beings, that is to say infinite by number, would have been impossible to comprehend. Yet there is a trueness to it, for consciousness and its expression as life does not move through space. You cannot take up one iota of space. It doesn't work this way. And perception and awareness, the outward expression of consciousness, cannot be weighed or measured, as it has no substance. Do you see then how creation could exist upon the head of a pin? We are used to speaking of creation as a vast expanse, a limitless horizon. But in truth, it is the smallest of things, and in fact is no thing at all." Mary. Well, that's an interesting comment from Mary, because she's basically saying creation doesn't occupy space, and therefore it cannot be measured, which is why we can say that creation is infinite, and just as in the absence of time within creation, this means that creation can be eternal, because time simply doesn't exist. So it's a similar concept, that creation is infinite because it isn't physically based. So if there is an absence of physical location within creation, that is, the high dimensions of experience, then how is creation formed, and how are we placed within it? Well, Mary gives a response to this when she says, "As you move forward through space and time, there is a ripening. Many things will come into fruition for you, as must it be. It is the movement, do you see? For we have said before, there is no spatiality to creation. We cannot name it as a place. It is a continuum. It is a movement. Your human existence in physical form replicates this for you. For you have the movement of time in space." Mary. So Mary's answer is to say that creation is in fact a movement, a divine continuum. And the Masters often refer to this continuum as the breath, or the one breath, that we move upon this one breath and we share it between us. So for the human mind, it's a little foreign to think of consciousness existing, but not in a location. And this movement brings us perpetual expansion, which again is why creation is infinite. Creation is ever expanding precisely because it is not dependent upon matter or substance or physical form. So this is why once more we can say creation is both infinite and expansive and eternal. It's very simple and very beautiful. So the Egyptian ascended master, Akhenaten, actually comments upon this expansion. And he says, the continuum becomes keenly felt, a river of life so vast and so beautiful that it brings bliss to all. Come into the buoyancy of your spirit, the lightness of your being, where you flow effortlessly upon this continuum. It is as if creation expands exponentially all about you, and you understand the fractaling nature of existence. There is unending depth to creation, for the more you look, the more you see. Feel how creation expands about you, how it responds to your awareness, how it expands and contracts accordingly. This is why we say there is an ancientness present within creation, though there is an absence of time. Akhenaten. So that's a really beautiful paragraph from Akhenaten. And he's saying that because there's no physicalness within creation, apart from our dimension, and because our consciousness isn't limited to form, then everything that occurs within creation must do so through consciousness alone. Which is why he says, the more you look into creation, the more you see, because it is completely based upon your perception, your soul's perception. So creation is as vast as we are willing to embrace, or is as small and intimate as we are willing to embrace. It really does expand and contract. So I get a sense of creation as being this incredibly nurturing, fluid continuum that these masters speak of, where we can ebb and flow in our consciousness. He also points out, though, interestingly, that despite the absence of time within the high dimensions of existence, there is still a sense of ancientness. And the masters have to use our language, and sometimes they struggle with this. And often they use the word ancient as something that signifies a great depth or a point of origin within creation. So I thought that was an interesting observation. And Serapis Bey continues this on, where he says, while you are held in physical form, it is difficult to appreciate the irrelevance of the idea of location. But I say to you, as a concept, the movement, the continuum, your acceptance of this can result in a profound sense of freedom for you in your human form. The ancient ones recognized this, and as such, laid no claim to land. It was the recognition that they themselves, as part of the continuum, were in fact everywhere, absent from nothing. Without spatiality, there is nothing to contain you, nor creation itself. That is why expansion is infinite. It all comes down to perception and what it is that you are willing to embrace. Serapis Bey. So, Serapis Bey confirms yet again how and why creation is both expansive and infinite, and how it is all linked to our consciousness. And when you think about it, it's such an absurd idea that we could place a boundary on the landscape and call it ours. And I guess the higher concept of non-spatiality really does give us an understanding of how irrelevant it is to even focus upon place and location. We can see clearly that creation is not a place. But how is it that we can still have a sense of location within the continuum, within the breath, within the higher dimensions of creation? And if we don't have a body, if we don't choose as a soul to give an outward expression to ourselves as form, then how do we recognize each other? How is it that we come to recognize the spirit of each other? Well, I've got some great guidance from the masters in this regard. So do please stay tuned for part 2 in this series.